What is happening, everybody? Welcome to the show. I'm Timmy Foodie. Today we are going to make a delicious lamb stew. There's a bit of rain going on outside, so if you can hear that, I apologise. I don't think it's too bad, but it might come and go over the course of this little recipe. So yeah, I'm playing around a little bit with different lenses and stuff on my camera and setup, so I'm slowly getting it figured out, but there might be a little bit of variation, but I'm trying to keep the angles kind of consistent-ish if possible, but I'm slightly different on this one, but I'm just trying a few things out at the minute, so we'll get there and figure it out. So right, today, lamb stew. So this is going to have a few little steps to it. First step, we're going to get the lamb slow cooking in the oven. So for this, you're going to need, I've got a leg of lamb here, butterflied. I've got a couple of them. These have just been out the fridge for about half hour, 40 minutes, just to kind of come up to room temperature a little bit. Need a frying pan, get your chopping board, and then we've got a couple of jars of this tomato passata, which is this nice organic stuff. A couple of jars of that should be enough. And then we're also going to use our cast iron pan, which I'll get out in a minute, but we're going to start this stuff frying off. So we're just going to turn this little bad boy on, get this onto a medium high heat. So about a 7 on this thing, 9 being the highest. So I think that's going to be about right. While that's doing its thing, let's just get this lamb out of the pack. Now, if you want to use different chopping boards for raw meat and cooked meat, then you can definitely do that. I tend to flip this over and have one side that's more for raw meats and the other side for everything else. So that's how I kind of do this. But you can have different boards or get a plastic board for your meats, whatever you want to do. But as long as you clean your board properly and sanitize it and stuff, you're pretty much going to be fine. So yeah. So I'll just do one of these initially, portion this off. I want quite big chunks, so I'm going to I want to almost kind of quarter it and cook it in big chunks like that, because I want it to sort of slow cook and get all tender. It's getting hotter. But I don't want to do really little chunks, because they can sometimes kind of overcook and go a little bit kind of crappy. So I'm just sort of cutting this roughly where I think I'm probably going to do, and I'm almost portioning this out for, you know, multiple people really. So, you know, one of these each, you know, per person. I think that'll be good. See, that kind of butterflies out, so let's just naturally kind of see what happens there. Maybe just that in half again. So we're going to end up with kind of chunks this sort of size. It doesn't matter if there's a bit of difference in size. That's pretty good. So what I'm going to do while that's heating up is just kind of get a plate out, dust it in flour. I'll just turn that down a little bit, that's getting pretty hot. So get some flour. I've just got some normal kind of plain flour here. Any sort of flour you want to use, even if you want to use a gluten-free flour, it's absolutely fine. So we're just going to pour that out. We're going to season this with some pepper. You want quite a bit. Should be good. And then we're going to season it with a good couple of pinches of salt. And then just kind of toss that all around. Can you see what I'm doing? Yeah, I'm just going to toss that all around. That's pretty good. And then just get your lamb. Can you see what I'm doing? Hopefully you can see. I bought myself a monitor to monitor what I'm doing, but for some reason the camera stopped working with it. So such is life and the annoyance of fucking technology. So yeah, so there's a nice really bit of dusted lamb. Just kind of push it on all sides. And just repeat that process until this is all done. And then we've got another little portion of lamb that we'll probably do as well. So just keep repeating that, and then we'll come back and begin the frying. Okay, we're back. So that's all just dusted in flour nicely. This is coming up to temperature really nicely. What we're going to do is get out some oil that's good for frying. I'm going to use a bit of grapeseed oil just because we're going to a slightly higher heat. So extra virgin olive oil, which is the only other really sort of oil I use, is probably a bit too delicate for this sort of thing. So this is on about a 6. Bit of oil in there, maybe a little bit more. Perfect. And then just when you put it in your pan, just make sure you put it in away from you like that, so you don't splash the hot oil everywhere. And we're going to just fry these off. Maybe turn that up a touch. It's still pretty hot, so it's good. Don't overcrowd the pan, just 3 at a time and 3 here, that's perfect. So what we're going to do is just let that cook on all sides, turn it over, and then we'll get our cast iron pan out. Right, so I've got my cast iron pan out here. We're going to just get some tongs. Now I'm going to use my slightly heavier duty tongs. I might get the extractor on just to help with things. So I've got my heavy duty tongs, but just be careful because I mean these are metal and this is a non-stick pan, so just take care when you're turning it. That's taken on a little bit of colour. I probably want to give that a bit longer actually, but you know, you can see there's a little bit of colour forming on the side. That's kind of what you want. So we're just going to do that on all sides. Let's just get the lid off on that. And then all I'm going to really do, once this is cooked and sealed off, I'm just going to pop it into our cast iron pan, finish off the process, and then we're going to get our passata in there, a few herbs, whack it in the oven, slow cook it basically, and that's going to be our initial phase. So yeah, this is just to really start it off and get the flour that's coating it's going to help to thicken things a bit as well, and also give us a nice bit of flavour and seasoning on the side of the on all sides of the lamb. So you can just see what I'm doing. I'm just flipping and turning and rotating and letting it seal off and get some colour. And obviously, depending on how big these chunks are, you just have to follow this process. But I like doing bigger chunks because I find it just cooks down a bit nicer when we slow cook it in the oven. So yeah, I think that one's pretty good. So that's starting to get a real nice bit of colour on these sides here, and just cook that flour off and seal in stuff. I think that's looking pretty good. I don't want to go too much more than that really. I think that's good. So I'll just pop those in this pan, just leave the lid on and get the next bits in here and just repeat the process. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to repeat that for these bits here and also this extra bit of leg I've got here. So that's going to, you know, I'll probably quarter that up, repeat the thing, get it all in there, and then when we get to that point we'll come back and I'll show you what to do next. Okay, we're back. So this is just the last little batch. There's a few smaller bits and bobs, like the second bit wasn't quite as good. I had to sort of cut off smaller chunks. It wasn't quite as nice a leg, but you know, it'll be okay. Different size bits and stuff, it's all going to kind of cook down differently. So that's all in there, heat's off on that. I'm going to just get that to one side. Let's give this a little wipe down. This will be hot, but it should be fine. There we go. So what we'll do is we'll just get this onto the heat, get that warming up. Now I'm just going to get, now I can put in a bit of olive oil because I'm not really going too hot. So I just want to put a little bit drizzled around that. Nice, perfect. And then I think that's just going to now come up to the heat just a little bit and start going. Once that starts going, we're going to get, I think I've got a bit of wine left in here. I'm going to splash a bit of wine in there because why the hell not, as I've got it. And then let's get a wooden spoon because we don't want to be using metal in this thing. So this is just starting, you can hear that sizzle's just starting now. So as you can see, all just delicious lamb in there, nice big chunks. Now while that's heating up, I'm going to get myself a nice little bag of mixed herbs. So this is like a little bouquet garni mix, which is a super nice mixture for this sort of thing. So this is a mix of thyme, parsley, bay leaves, marjoram. So really nice little mix for all this. And I've added a bit of sage to this actually, because I quite like sage. So yeah, but you know, whatever herbs you've got, you know, thyme is great with lamb, as is rosemary. So you know, whatever you've got will be good in this. So you don't freak out if you've not got everything. So so that's looking pretty good. I might save putting those in just a second. I'm just going to give that a little toss around. Now once this heat is getting up a bit, just a little bit more, I've got about a glass's worth of wine in there, so I'm going to pop that in a second and just let that cook off. It's not quite hot enough yet, so give that a minute or two. Yeah, that's good. Okay, so that's starting to kind of catch a bit on the bottom and get some nice flavours in the bottom of this pan. It's looking really good. So just now splash this wine all through. Again, it's about a glass of wine. You don't need too much more than that. Red wine or white wine, whatever you've got. Normally, you know, people have got a little extra bit in the fridge. That is smelling beautiful. Just sort of mix that around a bit, so anything that's caught at the bottom of the pan is all going to kind of deglaze off, which is just lots of nice flavour. You'll get this kind of like golden brown kind of stuff at the bottom of the pan that's started to catch from the lamb, which is all great flavour. It's not burnt, it's just like a kind of golden colour. So that's looking really good. So you can kind of see it's got all also nice liquidiness to it. And that wine's cooking off a little bit. I'm just going to add a nice little bit of black pepper. Excellent. Out of the way. I'm going to just do a hint more salt actually. And that's perfect. So that's good. I'm just going to turn that down just a touch. And a spoon. Beautiful. Okay, that's great. Now we're going to get a pinch of our bouquet garni mixture and just sprinkle that over everything. I guess 2 nice big pinches. Beautiful, beautiful flavours. Maybe 1 more pinch, why the hell not? In quantities, it's going to depend what you're cooking really, so give that a little stir up. I should probably be wearing an apron for this, as we're going to be implementing tomato sauce very soon. Right, that's perfect. So that's all kind of delicious, kind of, you can see. Yeah. Perfect. Now, we've got our tomato passata. Just open it up and just pour that all over our delicious lamb. I'm going to use both of these because I want a fair bit of liquid in this, because we're going to be adding quite a lot of stuff to this later. So we just want to make sure it's all covered. So that's great. So can you see that all nicely covered? Give that just a little mix around and splash some on yourself because you haven't got your apron on, which is fine. It's an occupational hazard, unfortunately. And just give that a nice stir around, and that is awesome. See, what we're doing essentially is giving this a nice liquid to cook into, and the flavours from the lamb and that bouquet garni mix will cook down into this tomato sauce really nicely. Maybe looking at it, I might add a little bit more of this bouquet garni. I think it would be nice. Just another little pinch like that. Perfect. Give it a little stir. And then what you want to do now is just let this come up to a real gentle simmer. In the meantime, pop your oven on. I'm going to cook this at about 130 degrees. No hotter than that, you don't need to. And this is going to just slow cook. So again, this is a great little weekend recipe. because you can make this, and this is going to give you meals all throughout the week, and it's going to be absolutely beautiful. So that's just really nicely just coming up to temperature now. So yeah, let that come up to a simmer, pop the lid on, actually wipe a bit of this tomato sauce off. Definitely wear an apron, because tomato sauce bubbles and flies out at you. So that's just starting to bubble ever so gently, which is what I want. I'm going to just turn that just down now. So once that's all really gently simmering, we're going to pop that in the oven. So that's great. I'm going to turn that off. That's going to go in the oven on 130 degrees centigrade, and I want to cook that for maybe 2 to 3 hours, just real low and slow, and just let that do its thing. And that's going to go all nice and tender and awesome. So let's get that in the oven, and then we'll be back in 3 hours, and I will show you the next step. Welcome back, everybody. Right, so the stew's been in the oven for about 2.5 hours. It needs about 20 minutes, half an hour more. That's just going to sit there and do its thing. In the meantime, we're going to get all the other bits prepared that we're going to be sort of gradually add into the stew. But we may as well get started now, because these onions that we're going to do are going to take about 20 minutes, half an hour. So that's going to be about right. So what we're going to need here for this little thing is a decent sized sort of a deepish saucepan. Maybe 3 onions, 4 onions, something like that. Then I've got some butter, some sugar, and this is just nice granulated sugar, unrefined organic stuff. Oh fuck, I've lost my leak. And I've got some vegetable stock here. You can use chicken stock, or whatever stock you've got. If it's homemade or from a stock jar or something, then either or. But this is just a vegetable stock from a little from a stock powder, which I use this Marcel chicken stock, which is really nice. Well, vegetable stock, they do a chicken as well that's really good. And that's, even their chicken stock is actually veggie and vegan friendly as well. So, but yeah, that's all I've got. So, I mean, it works better with chicken stock, this, but I don't have any at the moment. So I'm just going to use this veggie stock, which will be fine. So the idea is you cook this stuff down with stock, butter, and sugar. And it makes this awesome, delicious, unctuous vegetable sort of onion thing. So we'll just chop these up real quick. While I do that, I'll just talk you through the other stuff that we're going to do. So once we've got this on the go, I'm going to fry off some courgettes, a bit like we did the other day for when we did, what did I do? I think the balsamic vegetables, we cooked some courgettes, but also for lasagna, like a similar idea for that really. So we'll cook that down. We've got a leek that we're going to put into it, and then I've got some nice mushrooms that we'll do a kind of garlic mushroom thing. And as we cook each of those things, we'll add it into the stew. So once that stew's had that 3 hours in the oven, we'll get it out, put it on the hob, and let that just simmer really, really gently on, super low. And that can just kind of tick over and do its thing while we prepare all the other bits and add them to the into the stew. So, and then once we've done all that, we'll get some potatoes on and make a nice mashed potato to go with it. So once you've got the stew to that point, you can it can sit there for an hour or so, just really gently simmering. It's not going to sort of hurt it. So I fucking hate it when onions don't peel properly, honestly. Very annoying, but never mind. So with this, we only really want to really roughly chop these. I want these kind of a bit chunky, because they're going to go like super soft and delicious, so that it doesn't matter if they're kind of if they're big and different shapes, because it's actually, it all cooks down really nicely and differently. So the traditional way to do this thing is with little button onions. They're like little, almost like onions that you kind of make like pickling onions sort of thing. But it takes a long time to do it, and it's a bit of a faff, and it works just as well doing it this way, to be honest with you. So I'll just show you how I want to chop these onions. So we're just going to kind of top and tail them and cut them in half like that. Get your little portable kitchen bin, and then I'm going to just get them like this, chop down through here, and then just cut this way, just like that, nice and chunky. Super simple way to do it. Different sizes is good. however you want to really chop these is, to be honest, is absolutely fine. You can go a little bit thinner with some and a little bit fatter, just to get a bit of variation in there. This is heating up nicely. We're just going to need salt and pepper and olive oil for this, and then obviously the butter. That's probably about right. So that's 2 onions. I think that's good. I was going to do 3, but for the size of the pan and all that and all the other stuff we're going to put in it, I think that's probably about right. So let's get in some oil in this pan, probably about, you need a fair bit, a couple of tablespoons, well maybe a tablespoon, a good lug of oil, just to get things going, and then we'll add some butter in there in a minute. So it's a bit. I'll turn it down a touch. Give that a little swizzle round. Now we just want to, I'm going to season this with a touch of pinch of salt, pepper. I just want to let them sweat down ever so slightly, just to start cooking. We don't really want them to take on much colour, but just start getting a little bit of translucency going. The end bit I don't want. I don't want them to like caramelise or brown too quick at all. It's just taking on a nice bit of colour. I'm going to get our butter. I'm going to put in, like for a tablespoon of butter is probably good. That's about right. Perfect. Let a little stir around. Just get the butter off the spoon then. That's great. So we just want to let that butter melt through and coat all the onions. And I'm onto like a medium-low heat now. So this is a 4 on this induction thing. It's just really nicely just kind of sweating them down. They've gone a bit, you know, start to take on a bit of translucency, but we don't want them to do too much more than that. I'm going to get our sugar out, and then probably 2 tablespoons of this granulated sugar. That's probably about right, I think. Don't need any more than that. Give that a little mix around. Remember, don't want this heat too hot because it's going to start burning those sugars. So just a nice slow gentle heat, just so, and you want to just get that so that the sugar just starts melting down and coating the onions really nicely. That is beautiful. And then that's basically it. That's perfect for that. We're just going to get our little vegetable stock. I mean, I've got about 4 cups worth, which is about 1,000 ml, which is about a litre. I'm just going to pour this. We don't need all of this. I just want to cover, just a nice even covering. So can you see that? It's just like, just covered everything. And then we're just going to let that simmer and reduce right down, tiny splash more. That's good. So what was that? That was about 500 ml. That's about right. So 2 onions, knob of butter, 2 tablespoons of sugar, 500 ml of stock, and that's it. That's just going to sit there. Bring it to the boil. Once it's simmering, turn it right down and just let that cook right. And we're talking cook it right down so it's almost like a syrup consistency. And as you go, just really gently, just keep stirring and just be gentle with it. And that will thicken up. The onions will soften and go sweet. And this awesome liquid will just cook right down and become, yeah, like this almost like concentrated, stocky, syrupy thing. And then we're going to add that into the what's it called? Stew thing. So just give this a wipe down. So what I'm going to do now, I'll just transfer that over and then we'll get on to the next step. So what I'm going to do now is we're probably about reached the time limit for our stew, But while we're just waiting for that, I'm just going to prepare these veggies. Now, you don't really need to see me chopping mushrooms. I mean, with these, I'll just show you on a couple. We're just going to cut them in half like that, turn them over, and just cut through them like that, and that's perfect. So in half, rotate it round, and then just cut through just like that. Just some nice sort of chunky things. They'll cook right down when we cook them and get a lot smaller, so that's about right for me. So we'll repeat that with those. I'll just show you with our leek what we're going to do. Best way to do, I've just taken a little bit of the end stuff off the leek. So what I'm going to do, let's move that out of the way. Let's just turn that off for the minute. To do a leek properly and to wash it and stuff, and then with how we want to dice it, take the leek, cut down through here, drag your knife along like this, just nice and gently, rotate it round like that, 90 degrees, and then again cut through, and then you end up with this kind of leek kind of all cut into little quarters. Then what we're going to do, we're just going to rinse it under the tap. So we've just rinsed this under the tap, and then we're just going to cut through essentially across it, so you're going to end up with these little kind of chunks, and because we've cut it lengthways, we've got these already nice kind of cross-section cuts going on, so we can just go straight through, just nice and simple. You know, I'm doing about 1 centimetre cuts here, but you can go as fine or as thick as you want, and this leek's going to give it a really awesome flavour. So just finish cutting that. Perfect. Great. And then courgettes, which you've seen me cut before, we're just going to cut them lengthways, and maybe I'll show you one. You don't want to see all of this, but so give it a little wash. Put this over to one side. So just a little bit off the top, bottom. Oh, it's a bit too much, never mind. Cut it lengthways. I want these probably reasonably chunky. I might just cut them down lengthways as well, and then I don't want to do too thin. I'm probably going to do about 2 centimeters, just kind of chunks, because I don't want these to kind of fall apart in the stew. So the bigger they are, the better they hold together. So something like that. So can you kind of see it's yeah, about a centimetre-ish, 1.5 centimetre chunk. So we'll do that with the rest. I'll just get through all that, and then we'll start cooking off everything in the pan. So we'll be back shortly. So this is the stew that's been brought out of the oven. I've just literally taken that out. Let's have a nice little look at it and see. Oh yes, beautiful. So let me just pop this over here. We've got our little thing here. So I'm just going to really gently just give that a nice little stir. This is super delicious, tomatoey. The lamb's really nicely kind of cooked. It's still got a nice bit of sort of bite to it. And we're going to just kind of finish this off on the hob now. So as you can see, super delicious, nice big chunks of lamb. So now what we're going to do, we're going to put all these ingredients in here and form this beautiful stew. But and then obviously the onions in a bit when they're done. So that's looking great. I'm just going to pop this over onto my gas hob over here and just get that on a super low, gentle simmer. We don't really want to be cooking this on a high heat or anything. Like the flavors are already pretty concentrated, and the tomato's pretty beautiful. So just going to let that do its thing. I'll just turn that right down, and that can just do its thing and sit over there. I'll leave it with the lid off, just so it does reduce a tiny bit, you know, should be fine. And then let's get this stage going here. So turn this on, nice medium to high heat. So I'll put this up to about 7. So what we've got here, we've got our leeks, we've got our courgettes or zucchinis, and we've got our mushrooms. So we're going to do these. Well, I'm not going to just chuck them all in at once and then, you know, chuck them over here. The key here is we're cooking each ingredient really perfectly and then combining it into the stew. So if you were to just chuck all this stuff in that stew and do it, you know, in one big go, it'll be okay. Like, it will taste pretty good, but it won't taste as good as if we do it this way. So I'm going to start with the leeks and then the zucchinis and then the mushrooms, I think. What we are going to need though is, I'm going to get a few cloves of garlic for our garlic mushrooms, which we'll do in a second. I'll do that when we come to the mushrooms, but I think first I want to do the leeks. So The best thing for me with leeks is combining olive oil and butter. And the butter, but butter and leeks is just such a great combination. So let's get a nice little wooden thingy. The stew is looking good. Check your onions and just give them a little stir. They should be thickening up and the liquid should be dropping, and you know, they'll start to get really delicious very soon. That's getting a nice bit of heat to it. Let's just do a little. So I just want to do a little bit of olive oil initially, and then just a little bit of butter. We're going to add a bit more butter in at the end. And just have some salt and pepper on the go as well. Yeah, that's looking good. Just get that all mixed around nicely. So, and then we're just going to pop the leeks in here. Perfect. And then we're just going to do a little pinch of salt. And a few, make it a little bit finer, a few grinds of pepper. Maybe a little splash more olive oil, it's good. And then we're just going to gently sweat these down. So once you've done that, get everything nicely tossed around. If you've perfected your pan toss, then you can give it a little toss like that if you want, but if not, don't worry about it. Just gently move it around and make sure everything gets coated with the butter and the oil. I think that's looking pretty good. I might add a touch more butter, I think. That's good. Yeah, there's something about butter and leeks, it's just so good. And then just keep doing what I'm doing here. It's going to take about 3 or 4 minutes just doing this. Maybe 5 minutes in total. And just slowly sweat them down. We don't want the heat. I don't want to really be imparting any colour on these. I just want it to slowly cook them down, and they'll start to soften and sweeten and release all their beautiful flavour. So just literally do this, you know, work it around, let it cook down a bit, leave it for 30 seconds, give it a move around, and just do this for about 5 or 6 minutes. And then once they're to that point, I'll show you, and then we'll pop them into the stew. So let's give that about 5 minutes of just doing this, and then we'll be back. Okay, this has had about 5 or 6 minutes. As you can see, they're kind of softened down. They've gone a bit, you know, soft and squishy, and they're starting to smell kind of like buttery, nutty kind of flavour. They haven't really taken on very much colour at all. They just sort of, they darken a bit in terms of the green, gets a bit richer. And they're starting to, yeah, just smell really beautiful. So I think that's pretty good. So once they get to this stage, once they've had about about 6 minutes, this is, we're just going to put this straight into into our stew. That's back on the heat. I just want to cook off our courgettes now. So a bit of oil. We'll put the butter in a minute. Yeah, that's sizzling nicely. So we'll just pop those in, spread them all out nicely like that. And we're just going to, I might turn this up a touch actually and get these going a bit. That's looking good. And again, so each time we do this with each new ingredient, we're just going to give it a little pinch of salt and a few grinds of pepper, just so that each stage, you know, you're seasoning each thing properly, and the overall result at the end will mean you don't really get anything over or under seasoned. So let's just get that nicely done. Let's just do an extra little drizzle of oil. And I'm just going to give these a toss so that they all just coat nicely. That's great. And then these we can just leave for 2 or 3 minutes just to start getting a bit of colour on one side, and then we'll just start tossing them around. So right, so while that's doing that, that's been a couple of minutes, but we'll keep that going. While that's happening, I've just got some garlic cloves here. What we're going to do, just peel them, give them a smash. This garlic really is not very good, but never mind. Take out the little green bit in the middle if it's got it in there. So one thing about Australia is the garlic is terrible unless you get the Snowy Mountains garlic. It's just dry and horrible. I just don't like it at all. But so we smashed it up, and we're just going to kind of really roughly go through once and chop just to get it kind of started, just like that. And then once it gets to kind of that stage, just keep piling it up, and then just hold down this side of the knife and just kind of come through it like this, and you know, get it off the edge like that. You can actually kind of smash it with the edge of the knife like this. You can even do it with a bit of salt as well, which actually helps grind it down, but I've got enough salt going on in this already, so that'll be good. You can get that lazy garlic stuff in a jar, but I find it's a bit, I don't know, I don't really like it. You can see this is starting to take on some really nice colour now, so that's great, that can keep doing its thing. So get this nice and fine. If you're doing what I'm doing along the edge of the knife, scraping it off, just be super careful, because with a knife like this is how you can really hurt yourself. Yeah, that's good. I think that's quite nice. So that's quite nicely fine now. I think that's good. I think we'll leave it there. Excellent. We'll just put that in a pile there. So we'll add that when we do the mushrooms. So as you can see, this is looking really good. It's got some nice colour coming on the sides. It's softening down a bit. You know, you can start having a little poke around, maybe flipping the odd one if it's looking a bit, you know, naked on one side. If you want to use a spoon to help yourself or something like that, it just kind of helps you turn things over. And just be quite gentle at this stage, because they're starting to soften quite a bit. We don't want them to soften completely, because I want them to hold a little bit of their structure in the pan, but I just want to get this, you know, colour. If you can kind of see, it's just got a bit of colour on it, and that's just like awesome flavour. So you just really want to pull out the flavour in each ingredient when you're doing this. So I think that's good. That's looking pretty good. I'm happy with that. I'm going to pop that into the pan. That's taken on a nice bit of colour. It's softened just a bit. Super delicious. It had a bit of salt and pepper. That's all that needs. Give that a little final toss around. That's great. That's going to go into the stew. Perfect. I can have a little stir around. This let's give this a wipe down. Things are getting stuck on it. Perfect. Now that's got a nice bit of flavour in there from the oil and combining with the zucchini. So that's great. We can leave that like that. Put that back onto a medium heat now. So it's like a 4 or a 5. Just going to stir this into the stew. Perfect. Stir that around. Very nice. Check your onions at this point and just have a look. They'll be starting to go really soft. I'll maybe just show you. So can you see in there? I don't know if you can see. They're starting to get nice and soft. There's still quite a bit of liquid, so they're going to cook a little bit longer. But that's, you know, starting to get perfect. So we'll just keep that ticking over nicely. So heat's on here. What I'm going to do first, I'm not going to put any extra oil in at the minute. That can just go straight in. Turn those up maybe a bit to a 7. Spread these all around nicely, and again, our little pinch of salt. Nice few grinds of pepper, because pepper and mushrooms is excellent. And I'm just going to let that sort of almost dry fry for a few minutes, because you actually, as you bring heat through mushrooms, it starts to release natural liquid from it, and they almost start to steam a bit and do their thing. And then once they start to take on and do a few things, we'll add a bit of oil and a bit of butter. Put that back in the pan, slippery little bugger. Yeah, that's looking really good. And that's actually soaked up all that kind of zucchini infused oil now as well, which is really great. But I find if you put oil in too soon, they just soak everything up, and I don't think they're as nice. So this is a much better way to do it. You dry fry it, and they start to actually take on a bit of, excuse me, a bit of colour. And just sizzling like that. That's just really nice amount of sizzle. And this is a medium high heat, not fully high, just, you know, somewhere in between medium and high. Yeah, that's starting to shrink a bit as, you know, the liquid's getting released from it. Starting to warm through a touch. It's looking good. Once you can you get a nose full of pepper if you do that, watch out. Once you can start to smell mushroom smells, you know that's approaching the time where we can start adding a little bit of butter and a little bit of oil. So I'm just going to literally do a little splash of olive oil and probably about half of that butter. I'm going to halve that again, so that's in 2 bits. And at this point I'm going to just turn it down to a 4, so in like a medium to lowish heat. Toss that all around. Perfect, give that a nice little, yeah, they're great, smelling beautiful. So now that's pretty good. I'm going to add in our garlic, and I don't want the garlic to burn or anything, that's why I wanted to turn that heat down. And throw it on yourself. Yeah, that's great. So that's real nice garlicky flavours getting released, mixing with the butter, and it's forming this really nice little sauciness. That's super good. What I might do is grab a little, I just want to get a bit of parsley in this, so I don't want too much, so I'm probably going to just take about, I don't know, that much. And just let's, just while that's finishing off cooking, just run this through a few times and get it reasonably finely chopped. It can be a bit big and little, it doesn't really matter. This is all going to go into the stew and kind of cook down and stuff. Just run it along like this. And again, the super sharp knife when you're doing herbs generally helps. It generally cuts more than bruises. It's great. Chuck that in. I might actually, a bit more butter, because why the hell not? And just give that a toss around. Now see, that for me is perfect garlic mushrooms anyway. I mean, as a little standalone recipe there, just have that on toast with some, I don't know, whatever you want really, or even just like that. Super good. Make some of that homemade tomato sauce that I made earlier in the week. Well, last week it was, geez. And that's great, that's just really beautiful. And then all those flavours from the mushroom and the butter and the parsley, that's all going to infuse into our stew. That's awesome. What I might do is bring our stew over in a second. I'll pop this in and then we'll bring it over. So that's great. So there's our mushrooms. Super beautiful, rich, unctuous kind of sauciness to them. Yeah, beautiful, beautiful mushrooms. Right, so I've popped the mushrooms in my little pan. I'm just putting this on a 2. So I've poured that straight in top, and then we're just going to really gently stir that through, and that's all this beautiful buttery, mushroomy goodness is all going through into that tomatoey sauce with our nice big chunks of lamb. Yeah, that's smelling really nice. And that's super good. Look at that, beautiful, beautiful. And you can kind of add whatever the hell you want to this, really. Like you can add little bits of chorizo, bacon, you know, crispy bits of that, chuck that in. You can go, you know, add more different sort of vegetables. I mean, it's really entirely up to you what you want to add. I mean, I'm adding like things like zucchinis, mushrooms and leeks because I love those flavours, and I mean, I had all that in the fridge, so it seemed to make sense to chuck them in. So But the choice is up to you really. And obviously if you don't use lamb, you can do this with beef, you can do it with chicken. It's up to you. If you want to go full veggie, then instead of the lamb stage, just do your tomato saucing, but do it with like root veggies like potatoes, sweet potatoes, squash, pumpkin, parsnips, those sort of things, and slow cook those in there. And then start adding in all the other stuff as we've done, and then you'll get a really nice, almost like ratatouille type, tomatoey vegetable kind of stew. So yeah, super awesome. So that's just going to sit and bubble away gently. Let's go and check on our onions. That's looking really good. I'll just show you this now. So the onions are super soft and kind of beautifully cooked down. The liquid still, I'll just show you. Can you see it's still quite liquid? That's probably a little bit too liquidy for me still. I want to just cook that down for another 2 or 3 minutes, just so it thickens a bit more. And then that's pretty much the last stage of it really. We'll put those in, put it on really low and let it just do its thing, and we'll get some potatoes going. So yeah, let's just let that simmer really gently and bubble away. We'll finish the onions off. Let's give that another maybe 3 or 4 minutes, maybe a bit longer. Then we'll add those in and then we'll be back. So my onions have cooked down about another 5 minutes from where we were. And they're looking nice and unctuous and delicious, and they go a sort of a bit of a kind of goldeny, light goldeny brown colour. There's a bit of liquid left in there, but not too much, and it's reasonably thick. You could go further so it turns into a proper little syrup. I don't want to burn my chopping board. So that's great. So now we're just going to pour those into our beautiful stew, which is going to impart a really nice flavour to it. That's great. Perfect. Put that to one side so we can wash her up. And that's great. So now we just stir that really gently through everything. And that's got this awesome sweetness to it. And obviously that stock that we put in there will be salted. So again, that's going to push up the salt levels a bit, but I think we're going to be about right. And that's looking super nice and unctuous and delicious, and exactly what we want. That's awesome. So that's great. So there we go. There's our beautiful kind of lamb stew thing. What I might do, I could put a bit of fresh parsley in this towards the end and maybe a few more knobs of butter, but for the minute that's going to just sit there and really gently simmer away, super slow. You could even put a lid back on and put it in the oven for a bit while we cook the potatoes, so entirely up to you what you want to do. But I'm going to get the potatoes peeled and we'll get those cooking, and then I'll take you through my little mash recipe, which is pretty simple, but there's a few good things to remember for it that might be useful, and then we'll come back and serve her up. So that's awesome. We'll be back soon. Right, mashed potato. So stew's going, ticking on nicely. That's just doing its thing. That's great. So for this, I've just peeled some potatoes. Now my preference is organic Dutch cream potatoes. Super tasty. Really, they just make really, really good mash. So that's my preference. And organic potatoes taste a hell of a lot better than normal potatoes. Okay, so I'd recommend that's the best place to start if you want to get it tasting really good. Now with these, a lot of people like cut them into kind of chunks, but I actually find just slicing them into about 1 centimetre slices, they'll cook evenly no matter what size potato they're going from. So even from one this size, if you're cutting it the same thickness, surface area is pretty similar in terms of what's cooking. So that's my preference for doing it. So I always just do, yeah, something like that. Of course, a sharp knife does help. Yeah, and that's kind of my one major tip is, yeah, organic potatoes, Dutch creams for me are my favourite. And then, yeah, just slice them like this, as you're seeing here. That's perfect. So we'll just get them in. From cold water is fine. So just literally put them in, give them a little rinse, and then top it up so they're just covered, get that on a gentle boil, turn it down to a simmer, and just give that about half an hour till they're cooked. And that's kind of it, and we'll be back for the next step. Okay, so we are back. The stew has just been keeping warm, just really gently simmering. That's looking good. I'll just pop the lid on, turn the heat off. That can just tick along and just do its thing there. Potatoes are cooked. I've just strained them. Now I'm just going to add my little bits and bobs into here. So I'm just going to put in a splash of milk just to loosen things up a little bit. I'm going to put in some butter. We'll just grab a little knife. I'm going to put in about 25 grams into this. Just, there we go, pop that in there. Then I'm going to do some salt and pepper. Pinch of salt. A little bit more. Potatoes can handle quite a lot of salt. And that's great. I'm just going to pop the lid on, let that the butter melt into that a little bit. We might put in a bit more butter maybe. Get yourself a masher. Now you can, if you want to, use like one of these fine mesh sieve things and push the potatoes through it with a spoon, and you get a really fine mashed potato. But I want a slightly more rustic mashed potato, so I'm just going to go in with my manual masher and just get them all smashed up and get it to the sort of consistency that I want. Don't put too much milk in initially, because sometimes you can put too much in and the stuff goes too runny. So some people like runny mash though, so it depends what you want to do with it. But I want a little bit of stodginess in this mash, because it's going with a stew that's kind of quite liquidy. So I'm just going to keep doing this until it's kind of the right sort of consistency that I want. And just, yeah, that bit of butter in there is just super awesome. Obviously, if you're vegan or veggie and you don't want to be using butter or milk, then just put in a drizzle of olive oil. You can use your nutlex spreads and all that sort of stuff, your vegan spreads, but I find just a bit of olive oil does the job quite nicely. So that's looking about right. Give it a couple more mashes, make sure there's no big lumps in it. I think that's pretty good. It's looking good to me. Give that a few taps, and then just with the back of the knife, just get the rest of that off there. That's pretty good. Maybe give it a little try. Yeah, it's tasting pretty good. I'm going to put some fresh parsley in this, because I think a little bit of parsley and mash is super nice. I'll save a little bit there just for a garnish at the end. And then let's get a spoon. What shall we use? Let's use this guy here. Just wooden spoon, and just give that a nice stir around. And then give it a taste and see how it's tasting. It might need a bit more salt, a bit more pepper, maybe a bit more butter. And then give that a nice mix up. And that just kind of smashes out if there's any last few little lumps in there. But like I said, I want it a little bit stodgy and rusticy. So, I mean, that's great. So that's, yeah, our nice, beautiful mashed potato. Give it a taste. Tasting pretty good. Maybe a little bit more pepper. I think that's probably got enough butter in there. And then give that a little final stir. That's awesome. Nice parsley mash. There you go. And that's, I mean, it's super simple. You really don't need to be overcomplicating these things. The key to good mashed potato is honestly just organic potatoes. If you've never tried them before, because maybe they're expensive, but give them a try and see how you get on with them. But it really, that is the key to it, really. So yeah, that tastes good. Perfect. Just a perfect amount of saltiness. It's got more than enough butter in it, so don't really need any more of that. Just going to put the lid on, and then we'll serve everything up. And then I want to put in a bit of mash on one side, I think, just kind of like that. And I'm going to put all the kind of stew into that space there. That's pretty good, pretty nice. It's really hard to just not eat all the mashed potato. If you ever want to win me over, just feed me mashed potato. It's a bit of a weakness of mine. So that's perfect. Just going to pop the lid back on that, put it to one side. Try not to eat everything. And there's our awesome stew. So let's just give it a final little stir around. I'm going to leave a tiny bit of this for a garnish, and just put the rest of this fresh in the top there. Remember we put in quite a bit of parsley when we did the mushrooms, so we don't need a whole lot of parsley there. Just kind of stir that round for, yeah, that's looking really, really good. So now what I want to do is, now that's nicely stirred up, try not to make too much mess. I'm just going to spoon out a bit of the sauce and a chunk of the lamb, and then I'm going to get one more nice chunk of lamb in there just on top. That's probably good. Yeah, that's a nice chunky bit there. That's perfect. Just on top like that. Yes. Maybe a few little bits of veggies on there as well, just to, not that it wants to sit on there. And yeah, that is perfect for me. I might just get a little smidge more mashed potato on top there. Delicious. Just a little bit of parsley on top. Perfect. That is awesome. So yeah, so there we go. As you can kind of, oh, it's going to go out the light, but that is my beautiful slow cooked lamb stew with parsley mash. You can also serve this with some nice steamed veggies, whether like some broccolini or some kind of butter carrots, or, you know, whatever you fancy really. But there's enough veggies in this to kind of cover you off, so you don't really need to go too crazy with more, but if you want to, you can, obviously. So there you go. I mean, really, let's just try a little bit and just see what the, it's got loads of depth of flavour, the tomato, you pick up the sweetness from those onions and the kind of meaty unctuousness from all the lamb and all that sort of stuff. I mean, it's super delicious. Quite a hearty, winter warming thing, but for everyone in England watching this, it's a great stew to make over there, because it'll warm you up and keep you nice and, I don't know, it's real comfort food, this. So, and today in Sydney, thankfully it's raining, which is great for the bushfires, so it's made me feel a bit more nostalgic and want to be warm and cozy, so this sort of thing for me is perfect. So yeah, so there we go. There is my delicious lamb stew recipe with parsley mash. Super tasty, pretty simple really. I mean, it is a bit of a faff and it takes a bit of time, but once you've knocked this up, portion it out into little individual portions. It will stay in the fridge for a week easily. You can freeze it if you want to. When you reheat it, just really slowly bring it up to temperature again, and the lamb will still be delicious. And then serve it with your mashed potatoes or roast potatoes, or, you know, mixed roast veggies, whatever you want to do. It's super good, and this will actually break apart and toss through pasta really nicely, so we might do that in a few days. So yeah, so there we go. I hope you enjoy. If you give it a go yourself, tag me, do your hashtag Timmy Foodie, and yeah, that'd be great. And let me know how you go. Put some comments in the comment section if you want to, if you've got any questions, or any recipes you want me to cover, or techniques or anything like that. If you check out my the recipe before this one, not recipe, but the video before this one, it was I went through all the kitchen equipment that you need and just some good essentials, some good things to look out for. And I talk about using this pan, and the way I've used it here is kind of about perfect. So we've used it to slow cook in the oven and then add stuff into it to make this delicious stew. And it's such a great way to make stews, and that technique works for chicken casseroles and beef stews and all sorts of stuff. To just follow that same sort of principle of doing the main thing in this pan, slow cooking it, and then adding stuff in that you cook individually and place in stages, and you just get beautiful depth of flavor and really delicious results from it. So yeah, there we go. There's my lamb stew. Cheers for tuning in. Hit subscribe, like, share with your mates, and we'll be back in a few days with another recipe. I still need to do my frittata recipe. I've got all the ingredients I need for that now, so we might do that tomorrow. That's going to be a great thing to do as a quick snack in the evenings and like a light meal, and also good to take in for lunches with you. So but this will also be great for lunches. So yeah, cheers everybody, and we'll be back very soon. Bye.